The town of Green Hollow sits where the river makes a slow, tired bend. The kind of place maps show as a smudge of gray between larger, more confident towns. People who grew up there have a measured way of speaking, a politeness that is almost like a second language. It is in one of those measured voices that the story of the Hollow House is always told. Because some things are easier to say quietly, as if the walls might lean in to listen. The Hollow House was built in 1887, when timber was the lifeblood of northern Wisconsin, and every new house came with a porch long enough to watch the seasons pass. For nearly a century, it was a solid and ordinary thing. Porch swing, shuttered windows, a willow that bent toward the river. The family that lived there for most of those years left an impression that outlived them. Conservative, private, not given to visitors. When Clara Monroe died in 1962, the house began to gather a peculiar reputation. Not immediately, but like moss, slowly. The first reports were small and polite, the sort you hear in a church basement. A neighbor would say she saw a light in the upstairs window at odd hours. No electricity had been installed in that room for decades. A mail carrier mentioned a scent of lavender that hung in the hall, though no flowers were ever in bloom. The kinds of observations that made people exchange looks and say, "Funny, isn't it?" and then change the subject. Then there were the children. Children have a way of noticing what adults have been trained to overlook. A group of kids riding bikes one summer swore they saw Clara sitting on the porch swing in an old gray dress, hands folded in her lap, as if waiting. When they pedaled closer, she was gone, but the swing kept moving, slow as a heartbeat. Parents laughed, partly to hide the small catch in their own throats. The most persistent telling comes from a schoolteacher named Ruth Hall, who moved back to Green Hollow in the late 1970s to care for her aging father. Ruth spoke plainly. She did not like embellishment. One autumn evening, she returned from the town meeting to find the parlor lamp lit. She knew she had turned it off. The house was otherwise still. No radio, no cars outside, only the river's quiet work. She called out, "Hello?" and got no answer. She walked through the rooms and felt, as she later described, a presence like a folded letter, contained, deliberate, waiting. Ruth decided to sit in the parlor and wait. Before long, she heard the porch swing. The sound was exact and familiar, the same slow arc it had made for decades. When she opened the front door, the swing had stopped. On the seat were two indentations in the wood, as if someone had just moved. A faint scent of lavender lingered, and for a moment she thought she saw the reflection of a woman in the glass, braided hair pinned at the nape. Ruth slept in the parlor that night by the lamp, awake but not afraid. The next morning, the lamp was unblemished, and the indentations were gone. Stories like these layered upon one another until curiosity outweighed caution, and people began to reckon with the possibility that the Hollow House had not quite let go of Clara Monroe. The most commonly offered explanation was that Clara had been a woman of routines. She rose with the dawn, swept the porch before tea, sat to watch the river, and waited for letters from a son who never returned from the war. When grief took over, some say she could not leave those small rituals. They became an echo of a life that refused to end neatly. In Wisconsin, grief and winter share a kinship, both neat, both relentless, and the Hollow House is most alive in the cold months. Snow muffles the town, footsteps are delayed until they are necessary. People who pass the house in winter say the light in the upstairs window is steadier then, a soft, unwavering pinprick in the dark. Some evenings a visitor might see a shadow pass behind the curtains, like a hand traveling along the glass. What draws me back to this story is not the question of whether spirits exist, but the way a single life can shape the texture of a place. Clara Monroe was, by all accounts, an ordinary woman who carried her losses with quiet determination. The house holds on to that determination, perhaps because our houses are repositories of habit as much as of history. In Green Hollow, the Hollow House is a reminder that the past does not always leave politely. It lingers in a swing, a scent, the way a room remembers the shape of a hand. If you ever find yourself driving along the river at dusk and the road bends by the willow, slow down. Listen for the creak of an old swing and the faint smell of lavender. Whether it is the work of a ghost or the imaginings of a town steeped in memory, the Hollow House insists on being noticed. And once noticed, it has a way of staying with you, like a sentence unfinished, asking for one last moment in the light.